this midweek special episode, and in this one I chat with Catherine Benfield, Laura Johnson and Lily Bailey. And I did this last weekend at a conference called OCD in Society, which happened in London in the UK. And the conference was put together by Eva Stepney, who's been on the show before, and Matt Hiller. So as part of the conference, I did a live podcast in front of the attendees, the audience. So it was good fun. And I wanted to release it to you guys so you could hear the interview too. There were really good audience questions at the end. But however, for anonymity, I've removed those questions to keep the identities of the people asking private. The theme of the live podcast was called Art as Healing, and it was looking at these three fine UK-based advocates and how they use their various art talents and creativities to express what it means and feels like to have OCD, and also sharing information with everyone who wants to listen. So with that in mind, we'll get straight to this live recording. So I hope you enjoy it.
And these three people, so I'll start introducing them. We got Lily Bailey, who is, of course, an author. She also wrote Because We Are Bad, which is more of a memoir about your story. Yeah. Laura Johnson from OCD Doodles. So if you're on Instagram, you probably follow her. And Catherine Benfield, who is an advocate. She's tamingolivia.com. And she recently executive produced this, Waving, which you're obviously going to talk about, but it's got a well-known actor in it who's in Game of Thrones and stuff. Is that?
Yep.
Yeah?
Yep.
What's his name? Ralph?
Ralph Ineson.
Nice. So, enough of that. Back to mine. So, let me get my questions. So, thank you, first of all, for agreeing to do this. And we're also going to talk about art as healing and art as a way of disseminating information or complex scientific ideas out to the masses. So my initial question is, maybe you go in order, but briefly just tell us who you are and I guess what your creative expression is for OCD.
I'm Lily, and my primary creative expression for OCD would definitely be writing. I mean, I'm an author, and most of the writing I've done in the last few years has been about OCD, and I do find it to be creatively therapeutic to write about OCD. But something I also enjoy is I also enjoy drawing and making art, and that stuff would reflect my experience, but would be more for me than for anyone else. So that's something I've also discovered in the last few years. And it's definitely not it's not something that I have any intention of putting out there, but I find that to be really therapeutic also. Writing, I started when I was a teenager, before I even knew I had OCD, writing quite a lot of angsty poetry. I'm actually a very bad poet. I've realized upon finding some of the stuff I wrote when I was 14 or 15, but I think looking back on it, I realize now I was writing about OCD, but I didn't know that I was. So writing primarily, but art is also something that I enjoy.
Hi, I'm Laura Johnson of OCD Doodles. My creative expression is doodling. I wouldn't say I'm a fine artist by any means, but I do find that, and it's pen on paper doodling. I can't do the electronic. I've tried, and it just doesn't have the same benefit for me. I have OCD. I've had OCD since I was a child. More recently, I've had perinatal OCD, and it was during my second pregnancy that I decided to start OCD Doodles, really as a way to process what I was being taught in CBT, and primarily it was very sort of selfish, if you like. It was almost my journaling. I doodled instead of writing. I'd doodle, but then I thought, wow, I wish I'd have had these when I didn't know I had OCD, and that's when I started to share.
Hi everyone, my name's Catherine. I am the founder of Taming Olivia. For those of you who don't know, Olivia was a kind of personification of my OCD. I've had OCD since I was very tiny. I don't really remember a time where I didn't have it. But I never spoke to anyone about it until I became kind of critically ill after having my son in 2012. I understood through therapy the concept of intrusive thoughts and ERP and CBT, but the thing that really did me in recovery-wise was the way it kind of made me feel about myself. So the way I viewed, there was no self-compassion. It was very much like, I'm the worst person in the world for having these thoughts. And Olivia was a way of me kind of separating myself from my condition, and also as a teacher and a mother, a way of helping to learn how to show something that ultimately created a lot of pain, a lot of compassion and love and patience. And so Taming Olivia for me was something that started as a way of kind of when everything else failed, it really helped me. And then, so my predominant way of dealing with it is writing. My main art is writing. My husband got kind of, loosely speaking, bullied into creating the art. He's a graphic designer, and so he helped me to create Olivia. And once I saw her and how she worked for me, we decided to bring her out, and so she's now the blog. Lots of very exciting things happening with Olivia at the moment as well. They're pitching different series for her and things like that. So there's a way of kind of showing children as well how to kind of try and build up self-esteem once they're dealing with issues in school. I'm part of quite a lot of different projects. So I'm working with the University of Bath at the moment to create an app that helps people when they're going through an OCD relapse. I think it's going to be the first one of its kind. It's going to be through the NHS. And that has been very artistic as well, because we've had to think about the possibility of games, of different things that we can take part in, like kind of creating different, whether it's drawing, whether it's writing, whether it's journaling, different processes. So although I'm predominantly a writer, I have been kind of dabbling in other things. And then, of course, Waving, I'm executive producer of that. So we've been working on, tell me to shut up after 30 seconds because I will go on about this. So basically, a friend of mine with OCD is a writer, teamed up with a director, and Waving's just about to start its film festival run, and we're hoping it'll be out as soon as that's over. We got Ralph Ineson involved, which was absolutely incredible, but it's about harm-based intrusive thoughts to do with family, so that you'll see. It's a surrealist piece as well, so it's allowing the intrusive thoughts to be shown in a way that I just don't think has been shown before. It's incredibly triggering. It took me about a week to get over watching it, but I think that is going to be brilliant because, and that's not a joke, like, it flattened me, but I think that it's a good sign that it's going to educate people about the realities of OCD. So it started off with Taming Olivia, kind of branched out into lots of different things, really.
Yeah, well, I think it will scare them straight, or scare them into sense, because, as you said, like, maybe it's not going to be ideal for anyone with OCD, but for anyone that doesn't have it, it might be the final. Well, it just hit them just right to finally get it, that it's not a quirk, it's not a joke.
Yeah, absolutely. And once, it's really important, this is a passion project for us, so none of us, it's all been voluntary. So we've made sure that after it's done its film run, it's going to colleges, it's going to university, anyone can disperse it for free, because we really want to make sure it's about education. But there's also different cuts of it. So for some of the festivals, you'll have a 20-minute cut, and for others, there's 9 minutes. So, you literally have it on your phone, and then the next person who misuses the term OCD, you can kind of say, let's sit down, watch this in 10 minutes, they'll never say it again, So it's going to be a really good educational tool, we're hoping.
Thank you. Laura, so you said about, for you, pen and paper is the way to go, and I'm guessing it's more sensory and tactile?
Yeah, and I don't know, I'm not a psychologist, so I don't know the ins and outs of that, but for me there's definitely something in taking my time, listening to the pen on the paper, the sound, the feel of it, and it gives me that time to be mindful almost, and to step back from what's going on in my mind and not necessarily untangle it all. I don't do it to make sense of the intrusive thoughts, but just to offload sometimes, and just to take that pressure just get it down. And I kind of did it organically. I never meant to do it. I've always doodled. And I wonder if that's why, because it gave me some relief, not in a compulsive kind of way, just in a... I just enjoyed it, and it helped me to make sense of what was happening to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And that kind of brings us to our next question, is how did each of you kind of get on to this? You know, I know you said, Lily, that you've kind of been writing was it just a way of expressing yourselves? Anything you guys want to say on that? Actually, so that, two-part question, but also, did you have to deal with any self-doubt? So anyone listening that maybe wants to be more creative, maybe they don't want to share it, they just want to be creative for themselves. If there was any self-doubt, how did you kind of work with that?
Wait, what was the first part of the question again?
Sorry. That's why you should never ask two questions.
The second bit was self-doubt.
Self-doubt, and how did you get into it?
Okay, so I think I initially got into writing like in the small hours of the night when I was sort of a teenager and really unwell with OCD, and it would be, I'd get my notebook out and it would be like just a really calm space that I would have, and maybe one of the only times I kind of felt okay was when I was making that space for myself. At that point, it was probably too early for self-doubt because I was not planning on anyone reading it. And in fact, I think a friend of mine ended up reading some, and I was like, oh, this is awful. But like self-doubt hadn't really come into it because like this was very much not for public display. And then as I got older and went into journalism, and it was more of a profession, and that I was blogging about my own experiences with OCD. And again, actually, I don't think I felt that much self-doubt because I didn't really expect many people to read it. When I was commissioned to write a book about my own experience with OCD, then I did feel self-doubt, and I had to sort of almost imagine that no one was going to read this book again. That seems to be my way of dealing with things, because otherwise I don't think I would have been able to be as open as I was. But they were, I think, with creativity, like there are when I've been doing something and I know that it's very much just for me, so that's sort of like the poetry that I was talking about when I was a young teenager, it is a different experience to writing something that you know is going to be put out there. So actually, in a weird way, I've sometimes found with both the books I've written about OCD, when I know that they're for public consumption, that's almost less therapeutic, because it's more of a job, and it's more of like it's not as much my space. It's the space of all the readers who are going to read it. And it's not to say that I don't enjoy that, because I do. But sometimes I have to say it's not like people would say to me, "Oh, writing these books, it must have been incredibly therapeutic for you." And I would be like, "Yeah, in parts it was." So because sometimes you'd get really into it and you'd really be enjoying the writing process, but sometimes it was really like hellish, and I was just like, I've just got to get these things done because I've committed to explaining to people what OCD is, and I'm so sick of people not understanding. But it's actually not therapeutic, because I'm having to go back to maybe some places I don't even want to go, just because the story requires that it be told in a linear fashion. So that was a long answer, but and now I can't even remember what the initial question was. But yeah, there we go.
I think you've nailed it. So.
All right, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. First of all, how I got into... Sorry.
Yeah. So you said you've always doodled, right? So that kind of, maybe a bit more on that, and then just if self-doubt or imposter syndrome or anything like that comes up.
Yeah, so I'm a scientist by trade. I have a PhD in molecular virology, so I've never done anything to do with art, so I feel like an absolute imposter in that sense, but then I felt like an imposter in science as well. So I'd always doodled in science throughout my education. It just seemed to be a way of I could process what people were telling me when I was doodling, and I don't know if that's a whole diagnosis in itself, but it just seemed to help me. And a lot of my doodles were, I don't want anyone to analyse my doodles, tell me something I don't want to know. Lots of shapes, and I used to say, I can't take this in unless I'm doodling. So it's something I'd always done, and I said in my second pregnancy, I think I was just so sick of not making much progress, and I knew something had to change, or I needed to take a different approach to taking in the information about what OCD was, how to do exposure therapy, and just getting my feelings down on paper as well, my emotions, and that came out in these doodles, which I had no plan, and I completely relate to what Lily says about once you're commissioned to do something, it kind of it's a different ball game. And so I got a publishing offer this year to publish my doodles. Thank you. Which I am absolutely going to do. I'm hoping there's going to be more than one book. But as soon as that publishing offer came in, and I knew it wasn't, I had a lot of responsibility with my children, and before I would have said yes. And part of what I've learned is that I have to not do that, and it's just not the time at the minute for me to accept that offer, because I wanted to focus on my own mental health. I wanted my doodles to stay therapeutic for me, and to share them without the pressure of a deadline. So in terms of self-doubt did creep in, but I didn't say no because of self-doubt. I said no as a boundary, I think, although I'm doubting myself now. And so it's, self-doubt has been a big thing, but as I get older, and as I get more and more messages from people saying, this is helping me, oh my gosh, I feel the same, wow, your doodle helped me to communicate this to my GP, to my family member, your self-doubt my self-doubt has taken a backseat, and I use those messages to push me forward, and even when I don't feel like it, and I will do the book. But yeah, it's that's where I'm at.
Yeah, thank you for that. But I'm glad you got that book offer. But it's also good that you put yourself first in terms of self-care.
Yeah, and that's a new thing for me because throughout my education and it's I often say that the reason I have a PhD isn't because I'm particularly intelligent. It's because I was so frightened of failing and I didn't know what to do next. And so I kind of went on this path of do your GCSEs, A-levels, went to uni, did my PhD, and then that's when the OCD really went for me, when I started having children. And I wasn't in the lab 12 hours a day. I wasn't getting to work. I couldn't get to work some days. Sorry, I'm going into my story. But that's when it really got me, and that's when the doodling really came in for me, and that's when I started to use it therapeutically.
Like imposter syndrome. What was the first part of the question?
The first one was how did I get into it?
There you go.
Right, okay. So I think throughout my childhood, I didn't realise I had OCD until really about 32. So before that, it was a lot of very unhealthy coping mechanisms or sport. So I would go out a lot, I would drink a lot, but I was part of the sports team as well. So I kind of hid that because it was under it's part of the culture and stuff. And I got really ill when I had my son. But another thing when I had my newborn was that I couldn't go out and I couldn't do those things anymore. I couldn't go out and play whatever I wanted to play. At the weekends or during the week and stuff. So I was almost forced into being artistic. I didn't think that I could write. I didn't realise I could write. The first thing I ever wrote was Meet Olivia, which was my first blog that went up on the website. And I was kind of amazed that I'd actually managed to do that. And that felt great. And that's where the blog kind of carried on from. It was therapeutic for me, but it was also helping other people. So really, it was kind of being backed into a corner of not having any other options that helped me find the route through art. And just like both ladies have said already, I was immediately amazed by the response. It didn't take me very long to start talking about the really kind of violent intrusive thoughts that were involved in perinatal OCD. I realised at the time I was one of the only people really talking about that, and immediately had just emails coming internationally. And the pressure on that was absolutely enormous. You know, I was terrified I was going to write something wrong. OCD immediately attacked my writing, made me start thinking it wasn't just swear words. It was like I'd put really bad advice into my blogs or something that would really hurt someone. I'd never had a writing issue before. So it was like OCD was attacking it, self-doubt was attacking it. But as Laura said, you see those messages and you realise that actually you've kind of been that lifeline for someone who thought they were completely alone, and it makes the world different. So there was a massive amount of imposter syndrome. I remember we spoke about the fact that I was asked to write an article by the Journal of Midwifery, and I was like a petulant teenager for about 6 weeks, where every time I sat down to write something, the enormity of what they'd asked me to do kind of hit me, and I'd go off and wash up or do something that I really didn't want to do. It took me forever to write this piece, and it's still now one of the pieces I'm most proud of. But you don't just suddenly overnight, you know, we're full of doubt, aren't we, most of us, you know, and it's like, of course you're going to doubt what you're doing, but I think it's just pushing through enough to be able, and realising that you're helping people, that kind of helps you to push through and to keep creating, really.
Nice, thank you. So I should have said at the start, there'll be about 20 minutes for Q&A for the panelists. So if you hear anything you like or have questions, make a note. Again, to all three of you, you've all kind of alluded to it, but how does this creative expression for you, how has it helped you? I'm sure it hasn't cured any of you, but how has it helped your journey? And then also, where has it maybe hindered or been really challenging? I mean, you just talked a bit about that, but anything else you guys want to add?
It's definitely helped me to separate myself from the disorder. I think it helps me, just like I said before, it's almost like my time. I mean, I've got 2 kids, and getting that time is difficult, but I enjoy it, and knowing that it helps other people as well. I mean, that's just amazing to me, and it almost still feels a little bit surreal, because this is the first time I've ever met people with OCD in person. This is the first conference I've been to since I started OCD Doodles. So yeah, and hindering, well, there's internet trolls, and I've been told I'm a terrible mother. I've had kind of all those fears confirmed from certain trolls. Yeah, and so, you know, but that I don't know if I should say I'm old enough and wise enough now to know that doesn't bother me so much anymore. But you know, I don't know if it was you, Catherine, that said to me that someone said if you put your head above the someone's going to shoot. And so I've kind of just gone with it, and I see the difference it's making to people. So I'm happy to be criticised. I'm happy to, if I've said something wrong, for a clinician or a therapist or somebody to say, actually, Laura, that's not very helpful. You know, I think it's good to be open to changing my doodles if I, you know, because I don't want them to cause any harm, but we have to take that risk. And so it is actually good exposure for me as well, is that I have, every time I put something out, like Catherine said, you know, there is that doubt there that somebody will, it's not right. Especially as a scientist, I'm used to having data to back it up, whereas a lot of what I'm going on is an n=1, you know, my own experience, which I doubt, you know, have I got OCD? Did that really happen? Am I doing this just for my own gain? You know, I get there's all those thoughts that go through my mind when I post. But I have to look at the evidence of you know, the people that speak to me and the publishing offer, and I'm very good at discarding the positive and banking all those negative experiences. But it's a lesson, and it is helping. I'd say it's helping me more than hindering me. It's teaching me a lot.
I'd say it's immeasurable, actually, how much my work has helped me. The work with Tame and Olivia has taught me self-compassion. It's taught me self-love. It's allowed me to kind of notice when I'm treating myself awfully and talking to myself badly, and it has allowed me to kind of question that and try to change it. I've had experiences over the past few years that I never ever thought I would. I mean, I've been on a film set. I can't tell you about like the hours that led up to that and how panicked I was and how I just felt like I should run away because I shouldn't be there. But the things that I have done, standing here, doing this with all of you, you know, you would never, when you first sit down and you write that first blog, you would never know that you would have that opportunity. And it's not all been plain sailing. There have been really difficult times. I've had my fair share of dealings with trolls, and that's been really grim, and it does knock you, particularly when you're trying really hard. But I've got to say that, and sometimes it's hard. Sometimes you almost kind of want to vanish, and you almost kind of think, if I could just press a button and take my whole online presence away just so that I could meet people and they would know just that for a little while that I didn't have this whole background, this whole advocacy, would I do it? And sometimes the answer is yes, but like 99% of the time it's a no. I know that every time I meet someone new, they could key, this is like employer, this is a friend, this is someone from my sports teams, they could key my name into Google and find out that I had intrusive thoughts about harming my son. So bad that I actually, you know, I was very seriously ill and needed medical help. And so I kind of lived my life knowing that. It's also given me a real kick-ass attitude of if you don't like it, bugger off, basically. But, you know, you're kind of like, there are sides of it. It's not always easy, but I would 100% say if I had my time again, would I do it again? Yes, because the benefits of, as Laura said, more than outweighed any kind of disadvantages of doing what I've been doing.
Yeah, and of course, when you did that BBC article, you had thousands of people from around the world commenting and stuff, and it was on the homepage for like 10 days, which obviously would have been seen by millions of people. You had mums and dads at your son's school come up to you, right, and share their own experiences.
Yeah, I did. I mean, I've written a blog about that. I can't remember what it's called, but it's about the things that I learned. So I left the house that day knowing that anyone I walked down the street with, everyone in my entire life ever, would now know this about me. And the first person who came up to me was my postman who said that they had OCD. I can't believe, I then bumped into them at therapy. I was like, all right, we both knew what the other one was there for. I then walked into school and one of the parents who I already know very, very well was kind of like, oh my goodness, I didn't realise that was you. And we spoke about that as well. I mean, I hadn't spoken to them about mental health, obviously. And there was also, I mean, trying not to give too much information away, but people came from every walk of my life to tell me that they had OCD. We're talking teachers at schools of people that I knew who attended. We're talking about people from my past. I used to teach. People who I used to teach with came forward and spoke to me about it. I've had family members, like distant family members, email me and go, oh my goodness. So, I mean, I don't think, I've been in a really lucky position that I know just how many of us there are out there walking around and we have no idea about it. But that article, it was, I mean, we're everywhere. We're absolutely everywhere. I mean, we're awesome, but we are everywhere. And I don't think we realise because we don't really talk about it.
Yeah.
I think, as has been said by both of you, sort of opening myself up creatively has been amazing in terms of meeting other people. Like just even like the fact that you might get to go to a conference and connect with like not necessarily even creative people, like researchers, whoever, anyone who, and just people who have OCD. And the thing that enables me to be there is normally that I do write about OCD. So just in terms of making connections with people with OCD, it's been brilliant. I guess it's interesting to talk about like whether it helps or hinders me. Because I was thinking about it when you asked the question, and I think you mentioned, Catherine, about when you sort of start to, when your OCD seeps into your writing, or because OCD comes for whatever you love and whatever you do, and you mentioned worrying about giving like bad advice, I think, or slipping something in, and so something I've found with writing When I See Blue is that because like maybe even I had this with Because We're Bad, but more because When I See Blue is for like teens and children. I would like the responsibility of that. Like you can imagine, like it's like I'm like, oh, what if I give some really bad advice, or I just put something in that's a tiny bit unhelpful, and then some kid takes it and runs with it? Will that all be on my shoulders? Like, and you can go down rabbit holes with those kind of that kind of thinking. And so in a way I was thinking, I guess that's a hindrance, but then at the same time it is kind of in a way its own exposure, like putting yourself out there, and through being creative I end up speaking at stuff like this, doing podcasts, and that's every time I do something like that, that's an exposure for me, because I'm always worried that I'm going to like shout something really offensive into the mic. So like in a way it's a hindrance, but like it's also it's like regular exposures in a way to put yourself out there in that way. I mean, like anytime I've had to do a radio interview live, I'm like, I am about to say the most offensive thing to the whole of the UK. But I guess that's quite good in a way, really. Yeah.
Nice, agreed. So last question from me, then we'll go to the audience for a Q&A. So for the three of you, how do you find your various creative expressions help disseminate information, be that very complex scientific stuff or the principles of therapy or messages of hope? How have you found that? And that could be based on feedback you've had from readers and viewers. And
shall I just go? Okay. Something I find is that, like, when I'm writing, I'm mindful of the fact that it's not only for people with OCD. Like, it's anyone can come to this and read it. So I don't necessarily and just also because a book is a book. It's not necessarily just an exercise in like psychoeducation, like exclusively. You know, you want it to be like readable, but at the same time, that is always one of my core aims. So I have, like, I think in both things I've written, I've like included like the person who's going to the character who's going to the therapy session, which in my first book would be me, and in the second book would be Ben. Like, they'll be given a list of common intrusive thoughts, and like Paul Sokoski's kindly let me use his obsessive compulsive disorder in children index scale in When I See Blue, which was really cool. So it's like, it's sort of like I just slot it in there, and then like I said, because I'm mindful that like anyone, it's not just people with OCD who's reading this stuff, but also those are my primary people. I'm like, I'm here to like drop these intrusive thoughts so that you can be like, oh my God, it's that one, and you can have the same experience that I had when I like first Googled my intrusive thoughts or whatever. So it kind of, I will like to include like aspects of psychoeducation, like running through continuously, and like I can do that through like characters, such as like I'll have like the character of the therapist, and then they can verbally repeat stuff that my therapists have said to me, which has been helpful. And what question am I answering again?
Just like how your work helps disseminate ideas out into the public.
Okay, yeah. So I think I answered it. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
I get quite a lot of message from people saying, you've given me the words, your doodle's given me the conversation starter, and that means the world to me, because I didn't have the words for so long. I just didn't know how to describe it. I almost thought that everybody else was I don't know the word to use really, that I don't like to say I was the normal one and everybody. I couldn't understand why other people weren't behaving the way I was. And so to have the words means a lot to people, to be able to go into a GP's surgery or to be able to tell a midwife. And just like Chrissy was saying earlier, just the shame just seems to drop when you say back to somebody, oh, I've had that thought, or I've spoken to a lot of people who've had these thoughts as well. But in terms of getting word out there, I mean, Instagram was great to begin with. I mean, Alec Baldwin once shared one of my doodles, which I was really starstruck at. But he's got 1 million followers.
Didn't tag you though, did he?
He didn't tag me, no. But his wife was very kind. His wife was. But he's got so many followers, and I was thinking, wow, and that it feels surreal. And who else? I don't mean to like name drop. I mean, there's not that many people. But you know, sometimes you can share a piece, and like 5,000-6,000 people will share it. And so social media is great for that. I found, but it's making something that people connect with. When there's that emotion behind it and there's your story behind it, people are more likely to share it and spread the information. And so I find that when I'm very honest, that's when things get shared more. But I find it very difficult, to be honest, with some stuff still. I mean, especially compulsions and thoughts I've had around my children, like Catherine was saying. You know, I go on the school run, and I did do a BBC documentary as well not that long ago about my experience with an unqualified coach. And so putting myself out on Instagram has been the main way people have found me and shared what I've had to say. And then from that, the BBC celebrities have shared as well, and they've got a bigger following. So it's kind of a ripple effect, I guess. If there's a connection between you and one person and they share it.
Yeah, nice.
I think I'm really lucky because I do so many different things. So I think in terms of Taming Olivia, I mean, I hope it helps people that they can read what I'm very open. I talk about the kind of intrusive thoughts that feel like impulses and things like that, you know. So I hope that people are reading that and realising that they're not alone, or kind of recognising themselves through me talking about my experiences. And I mean, obviously, like just things that I've written, like the journal, the midwifery journal, it means that people who can't find the words can literally just go in and kind of throw an open book at someone and go, please read that, that's me. Because I know that when I first went to the GP, I couldn't tell them what on earth was the matter. You know, I think I took a printout from OCD Action. But it's something that would then educate the person who was reading it as well. So we'd hopefully like lessen the knee-jerk reaction to some of the scariest stuff that people might share. And of course, like the film, you know, it's a surrealist piece, so we're going to get a lot of art house fans. There's a lot of Ralph Ineson fans out there, and we're really hoping that through the film festivals and the fact that it's really niche and it's mental health, we'll pull in loads more people that have nothing to do with the OCD community. You know, because I do think it's brilliant sharing, but a lot of the time you're sharing to the same kind of people, but it's really important to get outside and pull people in so that they understand. So I do think the film, I mean, I'm ridiculously excited about this coming out. I just think it's going to be an incredible tool for making people really realise that OCD is not a joke.
Yeah, thank you, the three of you. And I like how you're all kind of doing different things. You're kind of a hybrid of the two of them, and then you each respectively are doing something different. And that as humans, we all, you know, I do a podcast because I like listening to things. It's no coincidence. So you love writing, so you do that. You like doodling or drawing, so you know, and you like both, and being on TV and being on the BBC. So that's all the questions from me.
Thank you for listening to this week's podcast. If you enjoy the OCD Stories podcast and would like to support us with a one-time tip/donation, please go to theocdstories.com/support. All tips, no matter how large or small, are greatly appreciated. Please subscribe and rate the show wherever you listen to the podcast. And thank you to NoCD for supporting our work. If you want to find out more about NoCD, head to go.treatmyocd.com/theOCD stories or click the link in the episode description. And quick disclaimer, guys, this podcast is not therapy. It is not a replacement for therapy. Please seek treatment from a trained professional. And until we speak, take care.